um, alternatives. There was absolutely no other alternative to battle. So they had to fight, and they had to fight, and each side had to fight too. Now, one side was politically, one side, the sides of the Kauravas, was considered by many intelligent people, or people who understood how the outcome of the war could affect the general populace. So their view was that the Kauravas were a little, they were politically dubious, whereas the side of the Pandavas was politically a little more correct than the Kauravas. So the Pandavas are supposed to be on the side of what is called as dharma, and the Kauravas are considered as those who are on the side of adharma. So being dubious was expected of the Kauravas in this battle, whereas being a little more honest was expected of those who were fighting with the Pandavas, and it was expected of the Pandavas too. And Arjuna was one of the Pandava brothers. On the first day of the battle, when everyone had kind of prepared themselves mentally and physically and were ready to battle, Arjun had a breakdown, and a severe breakdown. Mentally, he was very, very disturbed, in extreme turmoil and pain. So much so that he did not find the inspiration to even stand up in the battlefield. And this had never happened to Arjun ever. This was unexpected. Even in their wildest of dreams could no one imagine that Arjuna would be so mentally harassed, so mentally disturbed, and emotionally disturbed. In fact, even Arjun could not really ever imagine that this would happen to him. But nonetheless, it happened. This is life. This is how situations in life take, situations take turns in life. It kind of turns around for individuals. We may not expect ourselves to react to situations in particular ways, and then the circumstances force us to react like that, and we find ourselves on our knees in front of such circumstances. If we understand the personality of Arjun or Arjuna, and we understand the stature that he had, we understand the substance that he's made up of. This is like very, very unexpected, very, very unexpected. It is as if this Arjuna's having a breakdown, Arjun having a breakdown was totally unreal for Arjun and for everyone else. Fortunately, not many people were aware of this. People are just wondering what is happening, and they weren't aware of it, because in those days a sound wouldn't carry too far, and this is a huge battlefield. So there were not many people were aware of what was happening on Arjun's chariot. So he was on the battlefield on his chariot. The bugle was about to be sounded, and the war was about to begin according to, the war was fought according to certain norms. So they would only start fighting after the bugle sounded. And then they had to use their tactics and the strategy to try and win the war. So just before the bugle could be sounded, they would ask both parties that, are you ready to go to war, or you want to have a truce? There was one final time that they would be asked. So before that was done, when the bugle could be sounded, Arjun had this breakdown. And in response to this breakdown, Krishna spoke the philosophy of life, which found resonance with Arjun in his severe stress or his severe anxiety. Arjun could find it resonating with him, or could find himself relating to what Sri Krishna spoke. So much so that he realized that his mental breakdown was due to a lot of misconceptions. And because of those misconceptions, there was a lot of misunderstanding. And all this misunderstanding and misconceptions were very individual. They were, it was just the mind that had come up with all of that concoction. And finally, when Arjuna realized that reality was looking at him in the face, that there was a war, and his mind playing tricks was keeping him distracted. So the teachings of Sri Krishna helped him to be more focused and do what is required, which in the in Sanatan religion and in the followers of the Vedas, the followers of the Vedic texts, they call it as performance of duty, or doing one's dharma, or doing one's kartavya, performance of one's duty. Kartavya, dharma. Dharma is that which is very unique to every person's constitutional framework. It is the very substance that makes up one's constitution, one's existence. That quality is called as dharma, or that existence is called as dharma. And duty is that which one has to perform, understanding one's dharma, using the facilities that one has, using the body and the senses that one has. So Arjuna could relate to his duty after being enlightened by the words of Sri Krishna. And since these words enlightened Arjuna, therefore these very words they came to be referred to as teachings, teachings or lessons. So today's topic is life lessons from the Bhagavad Gita. So in brief, we discussed about what is life. Life is related to one's life, means understanding of one's existence. Existence is understanding that which is the very substance of existing, which is the very being of existing. So what is our substance of existence? What is it that we are made up of? So typically that which we can find to be the one common quality of our existence, whether it is me or you or any other life form in this world, any other life form, including animals, birds, humans too. We find that existence typically means, or one salient quality, and the most important salient quality of existence means to find a way to serve our needs. So to serve our needs, or service, is what is inherent to anyone who's existing. So either when we make our needs very individual, then service is to oneself only. And such an outlook towards life being very narrow is called as typically referred to as self-conservation. And when it becomes a little malignant, this idea of self-conservation, when it takes on a malignant stance, where self-conservation in terms of harming others, either mentally, physically, or psychologically, then it is no longer called as self-conservation. It is called as selfishness. So one becomes selfish. So this idea of serving one's needs is inherent to every living being. When our needs expands to our family, society, or people that we can relate to, then there is the conception of selflessness, being selfless to a certain extent, which means we are expanding our understanding of who we are. We are not just a person individually, but along with our individual existence, we have connections. We are connected to others around us. And when these connections expand to, let's say, the nation, then the service needs, the service attitude our need becomes to serve the nation and people. So then it is a very broad approach to life that we have. So what is life? Life basically, very briefly put, is trying to exist based upon our inherent nature to serve our needs. Now, when we can, if we can expand our needs to universal existence, and within that universal existence, we understand the conception of a supreme controller, whom we can address as Bhagavan or God, then we understand, then our needs become that we need to serve God and God's creation. So this is how we can understand what is dharma. What is a narrow outlook or approach towards dharma, and what is universal approach towards dharma, or let us say a little more complete approach towards dharma, and a little more complete understanding of what is life. So life lessons from the teachings of Bhagavad Gita is a very interesting topic. In brief, we understand what is life, and now we have theoretically understood what is life. So in its application, sometimes there can be forgetfulness of the meaning of life, or there can be very, very, let us say, very, very narrow-minded application of this philosophy of life. It could be motivated, what we'd say. There could be when we try to apply, when we try to have a practical experience of this understanding of life, which is just theory. When we try to have a practical application of it, the application, during its application, there are chances that we could forget or we could not remember what life means, or we could have a misinformed, we could create a misconceived understanding of what is life, or we could be accepting a misinformed definition of what is life, or we could have a very motivated application of the understanding of what is life, or we could have a very, very healthy practical application of what is life. So when we speak about teachings or lessons, then we have to try and understand what is the utility of having lessons. Is the utility in the form of forgetfulness of the original definition? Is the utility in the form of misconception of what is the definition? Is the utility in the form of misinformation of what is the definition? Is the utility in the form of motivated and like what we call as dubious motivation of what is the understanding or definition? Or is it going to be a wholesome and healthy application of what is the definition? The best way to apply, or the best way to, or the best kind of lessons are those which are wholesome. So from the Bhagavad Gita, we will try and see if there can be some wholesome lessons or some wholesome teachings that we can imbibe, or that we can look forward to, or that we can notice. So these are teachings, or the subject matter itself is lessons. So coming to the root, or coming to the need for having lessons, if you want to know what is the need for having lessons, it is because learning something new, or learning a better way to interact or to perform is always helpful. A learning experience is always very helpful. It is considered to be very healthy too. When we stop learning, and then it creates a kind of, it gives opportunity to be unaware of changing circumstances, or be unaware of present outlooks, present understandings, if we stop learning. Therefore, as humans, it is very helpful, or it is very much needed, and that we always look forward to learning experiences. We always look forward to lessons that can be learned. And it is, as I said, it is helpful, and there is no harm in it. Plus, it is also very healthy, because it keeps away from becoming, it helps us stay relevant, and it saves us from becoming irrelevant. It saves us from becoming, from going in the zone of ignorance. So one should always have a learning experience. To be able to have a learning experience, there are two important ingredients that we need. One is somebody who can learn, and the other is that which can help someone learn. So somebody who can learn has to be an animate person, has to be someone who's animate, someone who has a facility of intelligence, because it is the intelligence that helps us learn. Intelligence helps us analyze and learn. So it has to be an intelligent being. So basically it means it has to be a person. So a learner has to be a person. And the second ingredient that is important for a learning experience is that from which we can learn. So that from which we can learn can be situations involving animate beings. It can be situations where we have people interacting, or we can have learning experience from other species of life interacting, or it could be just situations. So a learning experience could be from any of these sources. Whereas a person who learns, or whereas that who learns has to be a person. So if I am a learner, or let's say there's a learning experience that I need, then I have to be the learner. I cannot let my situation be the learner. I cannot let any other species, like my pet or my relatives, or my friends, to be learners. If I need a learning experience, then it has to be me as the learner, as somebody who learns. And where can I learn from? So I can learn from situations. I can learn from other beings whose language of communication is more dependent on me than on them communicating. For example, if I have to learn from a dog or a cat, then I have to try and understand what they are communicating. Whereas if I'm to learn from a person, then we have already decided the form of communication. For example, we've already decided that it would be English and English words with certain meanings in which we can communicate. So if it is situations, or if it is any other species other than humans, then we can always learn. But then rather than the situation actively learning, making us learn, we become the active person who tries to understand what one has to learn, who tries to understand what one can learn. And there is the participation becomes a little passive as to what can be given as a learning experience. A situation is very passive and trying to give me a learning experience, or other species are passive in helping me. I have to make all the efforts, not just to learn, but also try to understand what I have to learn. On the other hand, if I have another human who is helping me have a learning experience, who facilitates a learning experience, or who towards whom I have so much respect that I can imbibe and I can imbibe teachings and have a learning experience. So if there is a person, then it is a little more easier, because through the form of language communication, it is easy for the knowledge to be transferred. So we see, since Sri Krishna is teaching Arjun there, the learning experience is very, very active. So the first lesson that we can try, or the first, rather than lesson, we can, rather than say lesson, the first thing that we can try and understand or try to meditate on is, from where should I have the learning experience? So I can keep myself open to all the sources from where I can learn. At the same time, I should also try to be very, very actively involved when the source from whom I am getting teachings is a person, because then it is a little more easier for transfer of knowledge or information. So if I have a living person who can teach me, then it is very helpful. So this is the first thing that we can focus on. So if we want to have life lessons from the Bhagavad Gita, we may need to find someone who is a person who can help us have this learning by sharing of knowledge or by facilitating my understanding. So that is the first. And that is why till the time Arjun could accept Krishna in the position of a teacher, in the position, more than a teacher, I would say, in the position of someone from whom Arjuna could receive some understanding, which Lord Sri Krishna did not speak. And we speak in today's corporate culture, we speak a lot about this, which is called as humility. Let me tell you a story about what I'm trying to suggest here. There was a very great saint of the yesteryears, not very long back, maybe 300, 400 years ago. And therefore, this history is quite recent. And this is from India. And a king had heard about this saint. So the king, he took it upon himself to travel from his palace to this saint's place, to the saint's workplace or his residence, what we call as ashram. So the king covered that distance. The king felt that it would be better for him to go, because he has the need to learn from the saint rather than order the saint to come to his palace. So this was good. The king was a genuine person. So whenever a genuine person has a need, they don't consider what their status is. They consider what their need is, and then they act according to their need. That is called as genuine or sincere. So the king was sincere. Now some people could call the king to be a little humble. So that is all right. Humility also is reflected as it is reflected as the effect of what we consider to be our need. If our need is so very important to us, then we naturally humble ourselves to see that it is fulfilled, if that is what is required. So the king was a very, very sincere person, a genuine person. So he traveled to the saint's place. Now, when he got close to the saint's place, which was, it was in a particular village, it was in a particular town. So he just knew that this is where this person stayed, but he did not know the exact location. This is the time where you did not have the GPS facility, so you could not exactly follow you did not have those means. You have to ask people to be able to reach your destination when you're close enough to reach your destination exactly, if you're new to that place. So the king was new to that place. So he saw a gentleman, an elderly gentleman on the street. So he asked the gentleman that, do you know where this saint lives? And the gentleman said, who? And like he said, saint, this saintly personality. And he took his name. That, let us say the saintly personality's name was ABC. ABC. So he said, do you know where the saint ABC lives? So the elderly person said, I know where ABC lives, but I don't think so he's a saint. I think he's a very, very despicable person. He is very unqualified. So when the king heard this, being the king, he was aware of, or he had proper access to information. Plus, being the king, he also felt offended that someone is speaking, is or is speaking insults about a saint that he's going to visit. So the king, being a man of authority, he immediately reacted. So he had, since he was riding his horse, so he had the stick which would help him in riding the horse. So immediately became angry and he gave a couple of whacks. He hit him, not very, very, very hard, but hit him in a chiding way, in a very authoritative way, that please don't speak insultingly one else. So hit him. So the elderly person became quiet, and the king felt that he had, since he was a man of authority, he felt that this should be done. So he almost every day the king has to deal with situations where he has to be authoritative. So he just did that. He did not really hit him very hard, but just as a slight punishment to someone who's being who's slightly wrong. So he did that, and the king went forward. So he had the address. This gentleman had told him where ABC lives, and the king had given him a couple of whacks by the king, beatings by the king on his shoulder. And the king had gone ahead. So lo and behold, he comes to the ashram, and there are a few people there. So he inquires about the saint, and they say that, oh, our teacher has just gone out on some errand, and he'll be back about just a few minutes from now. And a few minutes from then, they see the teacher coming down the road towards their ashram, and they turn to the king and they say that our teacher is here. And when the king looks at the person, it is the same person that he had given whacks to. And immediately the king feels that he was in the wrong. So he begs forgiveness from the saint. And those of you who grew up in India, you know that typically we fall down begging forgiveness at the feet of a very revered person. So he did that. And the saint, he laughed, and he told the king to get up, and the king was still feeling very morose that this is how he had dealt with the saintly personality. So the king was a little curious, and he said that, why did you speak about yourself in those terms? And the saint said, listen, when you're a king, you're a, you have such responsibilities, and you're worldly wise. If you go into the marketplace searching for a good product, wouldn't you want to test that product? And he gave the example for if I could speak in Hindi, then it would have been much more easier. The example was, if you're trying to buy a very good pot, then you knock on it to see if it is strong. Similarly, you are coming here to understand certain subject matters, to receive some lessons. And what you did helped you understand whether a teacher was good enough or not, was able to sustain any situation in life. So the saint had not reacted to what the king had said. So here we find that when we speak of a learning experience and humility in the learning experience, Many times people feel that the student has to be humble, which is true, but the student will only learn humility when it gets transferred from the teacher or from the person who's trying to facilitate the learning experience. And this is very, very peculiar to most of the prominent teachers who are revered in the Vedic texts, those whom we call as saints. They always are very, very humble in their approach towards teaching others. And they always consider themselves just to be facilitators, and they never consider them to be superior to their students. They simply consider to be themselves to be like postmen rather than life saviors. So it is very important to be able to have access to this wonderful learning experience, or this quality through one's learning experience, the quality of proper humility, because a humble demeanor helps us properly express our needs and helps us properly fulfill our needs. And we see that that is how Sri Krishna also interacted with Arjuna. Even after imparting him so many wonderful life lessons, Krishna still stayed as his charioteer and humbly took orders from him. He never ever felt that since now he had given teachings to Arjuna, so now Arjuna should take a lower position than him. And that is a very, very, very important quality of the teacher and also of the student, to be able to be free from the effects of false ego or mithya ahankar or false pride. And we see the Supreme Lord do that. We also see his humility he had so much to speak. He could immediately explain to Arjuna or try to give him help. However, if one does not want help, that any help offered seems like an intrusion. And only a humble heart or a humble disposition can understand how one can offer one's help, first of all, by seeing if offering of help is not being taken as an intrusion, and if there are chances that the help offered can be seen as an intrusion, then the demeanor of humility, a humble demeanor, helps one seek alternatives where one can make the other person comfortable and not feel that we are intruding into their life or their existence, but feel that we are just providing some comfort or we are providing some resources or providing some alternatives where they can feel relief. So that is a lesson too, especially amongst when we have relationships as family members, especially in today's times, the work atmosphere, the home atmosphere. Every individual at the work atmosphere and home atmosphere is very well versed in and has good skill sets, very well versed in technical information and good skill sets. There may be some differences in certain skill sets and certain technical information. However, on an average, everyone is well educated, including one's co-workers, including one's husband or wife, including one's adult children. So this art where one can help the learner have a learning experience in a way that they feel that we are giving them alternatives that can help them feel relief is very helpful. And Bhagavad Gita, if we go through all the 18 chapters, specifically where Sri Krishna speaks, which is chapter 2 to chapter 18, in many places we can see this being reflected. Every time Sri Krishna is asking Arjuna, is there something more? Do you think I need to repeat, or have you understood what I've spoken? Arjuna, are you feeling comfortable with what has been said? So again and again, Shri Krishna is open to being having a feedback. At the same time, he is also letting Arjuna make inquiries, and he's never ever expressing this intolerance with Arjuna's being curious. He's always being tolerant, understanding that Arjuna himself is very qualified. He's a great warrior. He himself has so many wonderful skill sets. He still had a breakdown, and this is life. So life brings about situations where we may be at crossroads, or we may feel helpless, and hence having another person who can whose existence can resonate with us, whose being there can make us feel relieved, or make us feel comfortable, is very helpful. From the learner's point of view, this makes the learner who's feeling helpless or who's feeling demotivated understand that in life it is very important to coexist. One cannot exist in one's own individual world. And that experience also helps the learner become humble. So the saintly personality, in a very practical and humorous way, told the king that when a worldly wise person goes to the market to buy pots, then one knocks on those pots to see if they are sturdy enough. Similarly, when one goes to seek teachings from another person, then one should see if if there are hard knocks needed in whatever forms that could be used to test the mettle of that personality of the teacher. And here the teacher was, the saintly personality could have said, "Hey, I'm the same person. I was just trying to test you." He could have said that right there, but he did not, because that wasn't needed at that point of time. However, later on, when the king understood that the teacher had such an outlook towards life, the king felt very comfortable and more encouraged to receive teachings from the saintly personality, just because of that experience. And this is an art. And Srimad Bhagavad Gita helps us understand the art of how one can create a space for everyone, for the person who is going to give the teachings and the person who's going to learn. Both can have a space where both feel comfortable for the exchange of data, information, knowledge to take place. So, and that is one of the important points that I wanted to cover. I think we are about beyond time. So do you think I should cover a few more points, or should I stop here and open up for some feedback or inquiries, questions? Hare Krishna.
So, and feel free to use your.
Do I have some more time, because I was
whatever your choice is.
So,
it's fine. You can speak for some more time, and then we can open up for the questions.
Okay. Thank you. Another teaching from the Bhagavad Gita is about what we are and what we should become, and what should be done to become that. It's like where we are, point A, where we need to go, point B, and from point A to point B, how the journey is going to be. In philosophical circles, the existence at point A and the existence at point B for someone who wants to have a learning experience is explained through the analogy of coconuts. And I would like to explain that analogy to you too. We know that a coconut has an outer covering and an inner core, and a green coconut also has water contained inside it, whereas completely what we call as ripened coconut is dried from inside, is dried up from inside. All the water and nutrients, somehow or the other, they are used in the process of ripening. And we know a dry coconut, which is considered to be a ripened coconut, does not have any fluid in it. So there are two existences that one can consider. These are the two existences that one can consider when one is trying to have a learning experience, when one is trying to have lessons in life. The first existence, existence A, where we are, and the second existence, existence B, where we should go or what we should become. And then we'll come to the journey in between, how to make that journey, how to go from point A to point B. So the first existence is the existence of green coconut, and the second existence, existence B, is ripened coconut. So for some, if a person is wanting to have lessons of life from today, we are having trying to understand what could be the lessons of life from the Bhagavad Gita. Then, as a learner, as someone who's interested in having lessons, that is a learner, and it is very, very healthy to always think of oneself as a learner, because one can always update one's perspectives and in the update it in a very in a way that can be helpful to us, and that is very healthy. Anything that is helpful for us is healthy. So as a learner, point A, where one is wanting to have a learning experience, and point B, where one has tried to apply, understand and apply that what one was learning. So point A definitely is the unripe stage, and point B is a ripe stage. This is how the word unripe and ripe is understood in the English dictionary. Unripe means it is at the stage where it exists, but it still has to make the journey to the ripened state. And once it is ripe, the journey is over. That is the understanding of these two words, ripe and unripe. So in Sanskrit, that is called as apakwa and pakwa. Apakwa means it is unripe, and pakwa means it is ripe. Or in Hindi or regional languages, I think so it could be in Hindi, it's called as kacha and pakka. So when we are wanting to have a learning experience, that is the apakwa stage, the unripe stage. And when we are in the process of having the learning experience, then we are making that journey. And when we have had the learning experience in the form of like application, then we are a transformed person. So we are, in one sense, we are in the ripened stage. So this cannot be limited to just one journey. We understand that there are so many aspects of life. There are multitudes of such journeys that we have to make. So if one has become ripe according to one learning experience, there's always another learning experience, or there could be a better way of having the same learning experience. So one can always go on improving. And this is when life becomes dull. And as I said, slowly we become irrelevant. So what is an unripe coconut? What is a ripe coconut? In philosophical circles, the basic principle that Sri Krishna was imparting to Arjuna is that, Arjuna, you have to get out of the Deha Atma Buddhi, or the Deha Atma, Dehatma Chetana, and come to the Adhyatmic Chetana. What are these? What is the meaning of these words? These are Sanskrit words. And Sanskrit is very, very particular about word formation, because these words are very, very meaning specific. So Deha Atma. Atma refers, generic understanding of Atma is self. So when we consider the body to be the self, that is called as Dehatma Buddhi. Now, what is the body? So the body is the physical body and the mental body, and you can also say the psychological framework. So our mental setup, our mental framework, and a physical existence is the body. That is this total package is called as Deha. So there is the Sthula Deha and the Sukshma Deha. There is a subtle body and the gross body. I will not go into more technicalities. You can attend more lessons on the Bhagavad Gita, but now we understand that there is the Sukshma, the subtle body. The subtle body is basically the that which is not perceivable through the senses, but can be understood, but could be understood through the facility of the mind and the intelligence and the ego. So that body, which is understood through these three means, is the subtle body. The subtle body basically is made up of elements that can resonate with mind, intelligence, false ego. To make it very simple, mind, intelligence, and false ego is what is the subtle body. And the gross body is our physical body, the organs and blood and the lungs with air in it, and the tubes with hollow tubes, like the vessels, the blood vessels, the lymph vessels, the intestines. So from the philosophical school, the school of philosophy, this physical body is said to be made up of the elements earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So this is the physical existence, and then there is the subtle existence. One who feels that this physical existence, including the mental setup, including the psychological framework, is me, that is called as the Deha Atma Buddhi. And what is the Adhyatmic Chetana? Adhyatmic Chetana is I, who always exists in an ever-changing, who always exists as an unchanging principle in changing bodies. That is Adhyatmic Chetana. Adhyatma, Adhyatma means being free from any other conception than the conception of the self. So the conception of the self is that I exist. The self exists. So anything else other than I exist is called as Adhyatmic Chetana. So what is the difference between Dehatma Chetana and Adhyatmic Chetana, Dehatma consciousness and Adhyatmic consciousness? The difference is that the body and the psychological framework constantly changes. And because of change, there can be forgetfulness. We may forget a few things that, when you change from one house to another house, when you change jobs, then there can be some forgetfulness, certain skill sets that are lost. So things can be lost whenever there is change. Secondly, with change, one is always under the pressure to update oneself with newer skill sets. So that can be stressful. And also with change, there can be anxiety about one's, one can become insecure about one's status. Will I be happy with the change? What if I'm not happy? Now I've changed, but wasn't my previous existence better? Now since I have changed, I find that I'm in a better position. So maybe I should find another change which will help me feel better. So these kinds of emotions that constantly appear in different forms put us in a lot of stress and anxiety. On the other hand, plus with the idea of loss, and when there is loss, which means that either you have to try again and use your time and energy to try and possess a similar thing or the same thing again, which is, in one sense, wastage of time and energy, or you'll never get it back. So that can also be very, very troublesome, the idea of loss. So change brings all of that. Whereas I exist, the when I understand that there is a situation where I exist, and I exist can never go away. So one feels secure. Everything else that may change around me, my existence or I as existence will always be there. So there is no insecurity about loss. There is no need to feel that I am going to be something better just because now I have better skill sets. One just understands that those skill sets are simply tools, whereas I am the same person. So one does not feel a sense of entitlement, or one does not feel a sense of accomplishment just because I have got newer skill sets. One just understands that. So this basically makes one feel self-satisfied. And at the same time, this self-satisfaction doesn't stop one from learning new skill sets, because one is secure in the idea that I exist. Therefore, I will never be lost. I never need anything extra to make myself complete. And since there is going to be no change, therefore stress or insecurity or anxiety which is connected to change is not going to be there. Simply put, when or in very simple words, if one can understand one's adhyatmic existence, and one can realize that the deha is simply a tool, or is simply a medium through which one can function, through which I function. So whenever I need for whatever activities that I perform, I can change the tools, and there is no issues with it. So if one is situated in Adhyatmic Chetana and sees the physical world and one's mental framework changing, one realizes that they are simply via media for me to perform activities. On the other hand, if one does not understand one's Adhyatmic existence and simply considers the changing body and the changing psychological and mental framework to be one, then one will always feel insecure. And that is what happened with Arjuna. Arjuna was very much overwhelmed by the conception of Dehatma Buddhi, I and mine. When we have the idea of I and mine, then the Dehatma Buddhi becomes prominent, because wherever there is mine related to I, one considers oneself to be incomplete. One considers oneself to be lacking something, and that which is mine makes me complete. On the other hand, if one understands one is complete, and that which could be considered as mine, which could be considered as my family, my property, we simply consider that to be a facility where one can express emotions, relationships, or one can make existence comfortable. Then a lot of relationship issues and a lot of situations of stress can be avoided. Not just avoided, they will never come up. So I and mine is a conception that brings in a lot of situations of quarrel. Arjuna was feeling that being in the Dehatma Buddhi, where he is concerned about fighting with one's own relatives and hurting them, was actually a very, very noble approach to life, was a very, very healthy approach to life. Unfortunately, he was not remembering that. He knew, he had the knowledge, but he was not able to access that knowledge in that situation because of his mental breakdown, his anxiety and his stress. he could not remember all the data that he had. He could not access it. And hence, he felt that concern for that whom he considered to be his or mine, which ultimately put him in Dehatma Chetana, was actually bringing him from the stage of a ripened fruit to an unripened fruit. And what happens in the stage of unripened fruit? For that, the example of the coconut is given. You see, a coconut has the coconut core, or the pulp of the coconut has a different existence than the shell of the coconut. However, because it is so closely connected to the shell of the coconut, how do we know it has a different existence? If you break open a green coconut, then one can scrape away the pulp or the inner core from the outer shell. And then we realize that the inner core is actually a separate, let's say, substance than the outer shell. One cannot scrape away the inner linings of the outer shell from the outer lining of the outer shell. That is very difficult. So the outer shell has its one existence, and the inner core has its separate existence. But because the inner core is closely attached, it is adhered to the outer shell, the only process of separating the two is scraping it away. On the other hand, so this is the ripened state. So it is the coexistence seems to be very nice. However, individual existences need a process of scraping. That is what happens when one is having this conception of I and mine. One feels that when I say that this is mine, it is a feeling of closeness. Unfortunately, individual existences in that situation where I am there and that which is mine is there, those individual existences have a lot of friction amongst them when they want to express their individual existences. That is the unripe state. However, in the ripened state, what happens is the inner core that is there, the inner pulp that is there, it separates away from the outer shell. And when you break the outer shell, you find that the inner core can easily be separated out of the outer shell. It can be easily removed. There's no need for scraping it away. So, although the inner core is still within the outer shell, so there is a connection. But this connection is not like the connection that was there in the unripe state. In the ripened state, the connection is close because the inner core is inside the outer shell, so there is a connection. At the same time, individual existences do not have many areas of friction. Hence, because the ripened state is considered to be the Adhyatmic Chetana, the Adhyatmic consciousness or the spiritual consciousness, therefore, spiritual consciousness always brings about lesser friction in relationships. It brings about lesser friction in interactions amongst individuals. It brings about lesser friction in the relationship that we have with nature and the way we use nature and natural amenities, the way we relate to the environment, the way we relate to the fossils that are there. Also, spiritual consciousness reduces or brings to the minimum, or sometimes even brings it down to zero, absolutely no areas of friction between the individual person and other species of life. It's like there is no conflict or very less conflict, because the reasons for conflicts just disappear away, just as although they are coexisting, although they are connected with each other. So this is another important lesson that we can learn from the Bhagavad Gita. How to go from point A, which is an unripened, to point B, which is a ripened coconut. And for that, we need to have teachings. And for the process of receiving teachings, one should be ready to express, ready to have a space where through the catalyst of humility, one can receive knowledge or one can share knowledge. So that is the second lesson, and that is what happened when Arjun decided to seek Krishna's help and intervention in the form of a teacher. And he took a position of wanting to receive information, and Sri Krishna had to stand up to give information. So if you have seen a pictorial depiction of this, Sri Krishna is still standing on the lower seat. The lower seat is a seat of the charioteer, and the higher seat is a seat of the warrior. Is a seat of the warrior. However, Krishna is standing on the lower seat, so he's still at the lower level, and Arjuna is still on the higher level, which is on the higher platform. However, he is kneeling down, and in this way, there is transfer of knowledge. And both the teacher and the student are expressing humility. So Krishna has not has not gone up to the upper platform, and Arjuna is kneeling down. So we see that if there is a space, if there is this realm, if there is this creation of a space of humility, it acts as a catalyst for the transfer of information. Now, obviously, this also brings in the concept of having a teacher who is also always eager to have newer and newer learning experiences. So, in simple words, if I can put this, I would say that a student is best placed, is very well situated in a situation where the student can receive teachings from a teacher who is also always a student. So even though a teacher is imparting lessons, the teacher is also a student. So a situation like this, or what we call as a prasanga, a situation like this is actually it is a series of teacher-student relationship, which is called as parampara. So since let us say student A is seeking teachings from teacher A, then teacher A becomes student B seeking teachings from teacher B. And these situations of transfer of knowledge can happen simultaneously. They coexist. And this is the beauty of Sanatana Dharma. That every teacher is a student. It is not that every teacher was a student. No, that is not Sanatana Dharma. That is not the teaching of the Vedas. That is the teaching of the Vedas, the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita is that every teacher is a student and every student is a teacher. So this is how learning experiences are always kept alive, generation after generation after generation. So the second is, I don't know, forgotten how many, the series, but I should have put it down in the form of points. So please forgive me for that. So another lesson is that when we want to learn lessons from the Bhagavad Gita, we should also understand that we immediately put ourselves in the position of being a teacher too. When I said that, from where can we have learning experiences from people, humans, from other species of life, and from situations. So just our situation of being a student can serve as a learning experience for another person too. And that is a great responsibility that we carry on our shoulders, that every teacher is a student and every student is a teacher. This is another great lesson from the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna explains that evam parampara praptam. So these are verses from the Gita. I think if you stay connected to our programs, which obviously more information will be given to you about it, more and more references from the Gita will be explained. So would you want me to stop here or should I continue? Because it's 8:30. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, does anyone have any questions to ask? Any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji Pranam. Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. I have a quick question, Prabhu. Prabhuji, you explained about how Lord Krishna has maintained that he respected Arjuna and he did not intervene in his, he did not say anything until he is really in need. But in our case, I mean, I'm talking about myself. Let's say if I'm in a situation where if I don't speak, it's going to affect me. At the end, it's going to affect me actually. So at that time, if I keep quiet, and the other person will go into the wrong direction. So how I can in the situation, how I can handle so that I respect him at the same time, I won't be in the trouble at the end. Could you please touch for me?
You see, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, he waited for some time before he started speaking as a teacher. However, he was still performing his actions as a charioteer, and even though he was being a charioteer, he did not lose his wit. He was still very witty, very aware, very mindful and thoughtful. That is a word, very mindful. How do we know that? Well, he took Arjuna's chariot and placed it in such a position where a conversation, there was more chances of a conversation happening. So in the first chapter, we see that. All right.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So we can always interact in ways where a person can feel comfortable having a conversation, and for that we'll have to use our wit, we'll have to use our intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Prabhuji, understood. Right. Thank you, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji, understood. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, I'll tell you. Let me give you an example from Srila Prabhupada's life. In the early days when Srila Prabhupada had come all alone to America. This was in the late 1960s. So he would young people in their late teens or early 20s would come. This was the time of the counterculture in America, the 60s, the 70s. So there was a lot of young people, especially in the Lower East Side, and they were eager to understand different teachings from the East, from the West. So they were eager to understand that. So Prabhupada, he saw that these students could pay better attention if they got good food. He experimented with that and found it to be very successful. So he would make nice prasad for all of them, and he would cook for them. And people would sometimes just leave their plates behind, and Srila Prabhupada, after they had left, he would pick up the plates and would trash them, or if they needed to be cleaned, the pots needed to be cleaned, or some of the plates needed to be cleaned, then he would do the cleanup too. After a few days, I'm not sure how many days, maybe a few weeks or a couple of months, one of his students happened to come back after everyone had left, and he saw this elderly gentleman whom they called Swamiji doing the cleanup. So he realized that he does it by himself. he noticed that on a few other days after this incident, he just stayed back, and you noticed that the elderly gentleman does it by himself. So everyone has this. They decent people. They always understand that if one can help another person, then it is good. So because of that upbringing, let us say, or because of that feeling, he approached Srila Prabhupada and said, Swamiji, would you want me to help you clean up? And Srila Prabhupada smiled and he said that I was just waiting till one of you could ask me that. And he said, thank you. So we see here, he did not speak. However, he did not keep quiet. He performed his actions in such a way that one of them or a few of them, somebody else would realize that they have an opportunity to interact, they have an opportunity to inquire, they have an opportunity to learn. And that is how one should try and behave. These are some of the teachings that we can learn and apply in our life. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful story. Example, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Are there any other questions or any other feedback?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam. Prabhu, what is the, quick question for you. What is the, you gave some really nice life lessons from the Bhagavad Gita. They were all very useful. For example, how to be a student and, what is the right attitude to have as a teacher. Now, Prabhu, what is the right way to learn the Bhagavad Gita? Should we pick up the book and read it, or attend classes? What is the best way of learning? How do people typically learn the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhu?
Thank you for asking that question, and Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for your appreciation, your kind words. The best way to learn the Bhagavad Gita is that what makes you comfortable learning the Bhagavad Gita. And when you're learning it and you find that you're able to do that, always be open to more and more learning. The day we feel that we have learned the Bhagavad Gita, that is the day we'll stop wanting to learn anything more. So there's some people who try to remember and memorize the verses of the Bhagavad Gita. It is helpful. Sound vibration is it has a very peculiar way of affecting humans. And a combination of sound vibrations has been seen to affect the larger population in a generic sense in various ways. So the way the words of the Gita and the pronunciation of the words of the Gita have been arranged are very helpful for if repeated in a particular sequence. It could be any sequence, but as humans, we like to be a little what we call as rational, or we like to be a little what we call as proper or very, very systematic. So one would want to learn verses in sequence. However, in any sequence, we learn those verses. Since each verse has been, it has been defined by great personalities, by previous teachers, to be a shloka in itself, a verse in itself. Therefore, any verse in any sequence. However, if you feel doing it in the numeric sequence after 1, 2, 2, 3, like that, those sound vibrations are going to affect our physical and mental well-being. I don't want to sound very mystical here, and I don't want to try and give you ideas about it. However, these are time-tested vibrations, and the effect is very clearly seen. These sound vibrations, the teachings could have been offered in any format. However, we see that Srila Vyasadeva has particularly presented in a particular format. Now, we believe that this is a format in which Krishna also spoke to Arjuna. That is what we believe. And Vyasadeva also was a recipient of this conversation. He was also hearing this conversation. So, Lord Krishna speaking and Vyasadeva retaining the original format speaks about how well educated they are. Not only are they giving good information, not only are they giving pristine philosophy, but they're giving it in a way where simply by chanting it, one can have physical and mental well-being. This is sheer, I would say, brilliance, sheer brilliance. That is how I look at it. So you may want to do, if you are comfortable with doing it chapter-wise, or you are comfortable doing it, just a few chapters, or you're comfortable doing a few verses that you like, you do it. It's up to you. However, even if we have done all these 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita from start to finish, then there are various other ways to still memorize it. For example, you could go from the last to the first now, remembering it. And that is another way, and that is a new way of a new learning experience. Or one could learn it alternative chapters. That is how one can recite it, which keeps one, which brings about some newness in one's learning experience. As it is, remembering or memorizing all the 700 verses sequentially takes a lot of effort. So most probably one lifetime would be gone in just doing that. However, if one has, one feels that one can have another learning experience, then start from verse number 700 and start, remembering them backwards. When I say backwards, I mean 700 and 699, 698, like that. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, it was very helpful. Prabhu, actually, my question was, I have a hard time memorizing. My question was more about. So let me ask you the question directly. Without, is it necessary to memorize, or is there a way to just learn the lessons? Like the way you shared today. Right. That is also, because memorization is very difficult for me. In general, at least Sanskrit memorization is extremely difficult for me.
So now I understand. Yes. Thank you. Now I understand. Previously, I thought it was about you wanting to actually learn by memorization. So I'm sorry for
sorry, Prabhu. Yeah, sorry. Maybe I used learn, the word learn. What I meant is learn the insights from the Bhagavad Gita. Like you shared today. Like that.
The process of memorization helps to focus the mind and keep it stable. That is why memorization is considered to be, by some, it is considered to be important, because it helps the mind stay focused. When we try to memorize certain information, then we stay focused on it. And that is, plus, if you have it memorized for the rest of your life, it is helpful. It saves time and energy. Otherwise, we have to go and search for it. So that's the later part. That is what memorization is all about. At the same time, if there is difficulty, or if it is, that is not what is helping us have a learning experience, which is true. Memorization is not the only way to have a good learning experience. It is one of the ways, and it is not we cannot say that it is the best way. It is not that. It is one of the ways to have a learning experience. So if one would try to have, one would want to have other alternatives, then there are many alternatives. and one of the alternatives is what you want is to have insights. So to have insights, it is necessary to at least know what the Bhagavad Gita is speaking about. It is important to slowly get used to the original texts, which are in the Sanskrit language. Otherwise, many times meanings can be lost during translation. And this is a well-established fact. Wherever there has been translations, through generations, meanings have been lost. Sometimes translations help make certain information relevant. That is true. That does not negate the fact that there is loss during translations. So it is helpful to try and see if we can get comfortable with the original verses. I'm not speaking of memorization. I'm speaking about trying to understand what the original texts mean. And this, we may not be able to understand it the way 3 generations back understood it, because communication was different then. The language was a little different then. So in today's times, although the texts are the same, the understanding could be a little different. Like 3 generations back, when we would say water, not many people would understand it, because it was just before the British started moving around. Water was just, maybe if it was used in the Roman part of the world, then it was just limited to them. But today, water is understood quite widely. What I'm trying to say is that jala in Sanskrit today can be very easily understood as water. However, jal itself, if we can, and it's possible, when we try to learn another's language, and slowly we can understand what that language actually is trying to convey. The language is actually sound symbols. So if we can understand the script a little bit, not completely, and if we can understand the meaning in words, the vocabulary, then it becomes easier to communicate, or easier for understanding what is being said. So that being said, if over the years one can slowly become comfortable with the Sanskrit language, it is helpful. It doesn't have to be that we have to be very good in Sanskrit language or average in Sanskrit language. Even if we are comfortable like 10% with the Sanskrit language, still it is helpful. With any language, this is the case. Then insights. For insights, we have to read the texts. So there's no need for memorization. If there is memorization, then it is helpful. Even if we are not able to memorize, there is no loss, because today information is available in the printed form and the digital form. For example, if today's children do not learn the tables, the tables of 2s and 3s and 4s, there's no loss, because they can use the calculator, and there are so many other ways that they can do calculations. At one point of time, we did not have calculators, so it was considered very essential that we know our tables. The texts are available in the digital form, they are available in the printed form. So if we can read the text regularly, then having insights can keep us grounded in the text, can keep us grounded in the verses. It can keep us connected to the verses. That is one way to, I think, is that helpful, what I said?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Yes, it was. Yes, it was very helpful. Thank you. I'll start attempting these approaches. I know, of course, I know Hindi, and I understand Marathi also. So maybe I can.
Yes, since both these languages, they originate from. It is said that they originate from Sanskrit, and they have similar rules of grammar.
Yes,
like
yes.
samas, like that. So it would be a little more easier, I guess, to get comfortable with at least some aspects of Sanskrit in the Bhagavad Gita. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Any other comments? You're welcome. So can we stop here if there's nothing more to be added?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I have a few questions if you can answer, if we still have some time.
Yeah, I think so. We have time.
I'm glad to attend this class, and I would say this is my first class regarding the ISKCON classes, right? I didn't have the chance to listen to your whole thing, right? But I got some of these things, and just to let you know a few things about me is I am reading the Bhagavad Gita right now. And I am in 15th chapter. So I was just wanted to ask, is it necessary to learn and read the Sanskrit sloks, or it is okay just if we read the translation and purport?
What is important is to be able to understand the message in the language that we can relate to. That is important. So we are very lucky and fortunate that we have very sincere translators who are trying to present the message as it is. So that is our great fortune, and we are grateful to all these translators. Especially we are grateful to our ISKCON's founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, who took on this colossal task of translating this into the English language. And from there, many other translators have, they have translated into the regional languages the works of Srila Prabhupada. So one can read those verses and at least become acquainted with the message of the Bhagavad Gita. If it is possible, over a period of time, one can read a few verses whose translations we like. If we like, let's say, a few verses from 15th chapter, let's say 3 verses from 15th chapter, which we feel very much connected to, or we can very much relate to it, then over a period of time, I'm not saying immediately, but over a period of time, because these are slowly becoming our our favorite verses, or verses that we generally like to remember, then we can try to read the Sanskrit texts and try to see if we can understand the meaning of each of the words that are in Sanskrit in the language that we communicate in. So if you are communicating in English, we can, and if the verse that we like is the 3rd verse of the 15th chapter, this is just an example, then let's say after a week, or after 6 months, or after 2 years of regular reading of the Bhagavad Gita, where we every day, or every alternate day we are reading the Bhagavad Gita, then it could be the time interval is very it depends on the reader. As I said, it could be a week, it could be 6 months, it could be 2 years, but at certain time of our reading, at a certain point of time in our reading, we can try and read the Sanskrit of verse number 3 from chapter number 15. And in this way, slowly, we can try and see how many other verses we would like to read the Sanskrit to, and try to understand the meaning of each of the Sanskrit words. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, that's helpful. So basically, you are saying as you are starting to read the Bhagavad Gita, you can read in English language, and then as you go on, you can start learning in Sanskrit language. Is it right? Did I get it right?
You can do that in your 2nd reading, you can do that in the 3rd reading, you can do that in the 10th reading. It depends on you when you want to do it. Because typically a person finds a few verses very relevant to one's life. That is how the Bhagavad Gita is. Because we all have different tastes, different experiences in life, we find some of the verses, some of the chapters to be very, very interesting. And in your repeated readings, you could try and read the Sanskrit of those chapters, or you could read the Sanskrit of the verses from some of those chapters.
That's helpful, Babuji. I do have one more question. If we still have time, we still have time, right?
Yes, you can ask.
Okay, so as we are living in the Western country now, right? Which is US. So basically, I come from a family where we are doing the business, right? And here, if you are doing the business, and if you are in the food business, then most likely you are going to be selling meat, right? Especially the beef patties, like the beef. And I do have a restaurant in Massachusetts. Uh, when I bought this 2 years ago, I wasn't aware of all this, what we call it, uh, our Hindu culture, right? That we shouldn't sell beef. Uh, we don't really eat, but our main business is to sell beef patties, since it is a burger business, right? So I just wanted to ask you, uh, is it okay, or how sinful it is to keep going on with this?
So your question is that is it okay, or how sinful it is?
Yes.
Uh, with all humility at my disposal, I would like to say that I don't think so. I'm in a position to judge you. So I will not be judging whether you're being sinful or whether it is okay. However, I'll explain what I have learned. The most important thing in spiritual life is to have an existence, a healthy existence that lets us practice spiritual life. So, what is a healthy existence? A healthy existence is related to one's health, physical and mental, and resources in terms of money, or in terms of a house, in terms of family and friends. These are some of the resources. So if we have good relationships with families, friends, if we have good security in terms of finance, in terms of shelter, then that existence is healthy, that existence is helpful for practicing spiritual life. So whatever one has to do, or whatever activities one has to perform to have a healthy existence is important. That is the first thing. Now, in order to have one's healthy existence, one should try not to hurt another's existence. That is that kind of self-preservation simply creates a situation where we lose resources, we lose a support system. So even with, let's say, animals and people wanting to eat their flesh, we can see that how our ecosystem is being disturbed by that. We know that ecologically there is a disaster happening. There's so much of pollution of the waters and the ground. What to speak of the emotional stress that the workers have to go through, that that are involved in such factories or institutions. So for our existence, if we are consciously or unconsciously we are harming another's existence, then it is not healthy because it takes away our own support system. So ultimately, we will be in a difficult position. We will be either stressed out, or we will be constantly in anxiety. We will not have someone with whom we can discuss. So there are many things like that can happen. So this is important. Now, if it is very essential to survive, like let's say there is a famine, and out of 2 people only 1 can survive, because resources are not available, then amongst the 2, either there can be a decent discussion as to who should sacrifice and who should survive, or there can be a fight. So in situations where one's own existence is being hampered, that is the only place where we can think of our own survival at the cost of another's survival. So if that is not happening, then we should try and seek out alternatives where we live and let live. So in your situation, if it is possible that without it harming your own physical existence, without it harming your finances or your means of livelihood, if it doesn't harm that, please see if there are alternatives to certain aspects of your business. If there are alternatives, try and implement that. When I mean alternatives, if it is possible to stop the functioning of one particular aspect of a business and replace it with another, if that is possible, try and do it. For situations where that is not possible, let me give an example which does not apply to your situation immediately, but if it helps you, it is all right. Let's say when Yudhishthira Maharaj ultimately was victorious in the war, he still wanted to do prayashchitta. He still wanted to go and express his grief or say sorry that in the war so many people had to die. So he still wanted to express that. Because he knows that even though the war, he was on the cause of that which is right, still people lost their lives. So it is a decent thing to go and express one's sorrow or say sorry. It is a very decent thing to do that. It is a very healthy approach to life, or a healthy way of living to do that. Is it sinful? Well, the scriptures say that if we harm other living entity, then we have to accept the reactions of that. If somebody wants to call that sin, so they may call it as sin. What basically it means is that we'll have to accept the reactions for that, and the reactions are troublesome. The reactions are going to give us pain and give us difficulty. So if we are not able to stop certain activities, then we should become strong enough, and we should accept the fact that we are going to get reactions, and there is no way to not be getting reactions. So are we willing to do that? Are we willing to face the reactions? And if you're not willing to face the reactions, then are we willing enough to look at alternatives? And if we are not willing to look at alternatives, then can we at least consider that is our existence, is one's healthy existence, is that really being harmed by doing these activities if I don't do these activities? And if it is not being harmed, then maybe we can do something else. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhuji, it is helpful. So basically, you are saying is when you have a chance, when it do not hurt you financially, at least then you can try to find the alternate type of business, right? Correct?
Yes. One's healthy existence is very important for practice of spiritual life.
Okay,
That
but
is a basic.
yes, Prabhuji, but the thing is, even if we are not doing this thing, is going to be someone else is going to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So So my question is, like everybody wants to eat the meat here, and everybody is looking for a work. So even if you are providing the work to others, even if you are providing the food to others, is it how should I look at it? Because cows are our sacred mother, right? So this is my main thing to look at. Since you said you can find an alternate option, so it does help. And the other question is about the liquor, right? The liquor. If you are selling, if you are in the liquor business, then customers who want to drink the alcohol, but it is gonna it is good for now, but it is gonna affect their health later on, which is they are willing to do those. So should we stay into that one as well, or we should find an alternate option?
Um, the only way people can see alternatives is when they're educated about it. And that is why we, as many other institutions, but specifically we as ISKCON, are trying to share all this information and trying to make this knowledge available far and wide through very practical means. So we are trying to do that. And I think most of our teachers, most of the from Sanatan Dharma, they were requesting all of their students from all the future generations, they were requesting them to try to see that they can find means to spread this knowledge, to find means that people can be educated in this knowledge, where they realize that one can be very, very healthy without wanting to harm another living existence, another living entity. So education and sharing of knowledge, in today's corporate culture, they call it as knowledge sharing, which is considered to be very important. So knowledge sharing is very important. And every individual, it is not just an institution, but every individual at their level, at their individual levels, can try and share correct information, the correct knowledge that is there. Secondly, cow is our mother in Sanatan Dharma, in Hinduism, in Vaishnavism. Cow is our mother, and every living entity is a brother and sister. So we just don't single out the cow and leave out the others. Hence, we try not to harm any living entity. So cow being our mother, we also respect every other living entity as our own. And that is why Sanatan Dharma is so very, it has such a very pan or broad approach. It is a pan appeal because Ma Himsyat Sarva Bhutani, we try not to harm any living entity. And we consciously try to avoid wanting to harm any living entity. Amongst all the other living entities, the cow is for various reasons also accepted as our mother, one of our mothers. So that is about the cow. And again, how is it that we accept her as the mother? What are the reasons for which we accept her as our mother? And what are the reasons we consider every other living entity as our brother and sister? Can only be understood by others if we can share this information, and we can share it in the proper way, and we should be able to share the proper information. We should try and see that when we share this information, it should not appear to be just superstition. So that is one way. Another way. Similarly, about harmful substances or substance abuse that can harm one's health, physical, mental, and psychological, can only be understood when people become more and more educated about it. Not just educated about the harm that it causes, but also receive education as to how one can find the strength not to do substance abuse, to get training, education and training in how to have the inner strength or inner will, the willpower to do the right thing and try to avoid doing activities, including substance abuse, that is not good for one and not healthy for one. Is that all right?
Yes, Prabhuji, it's helpful. Thank you very much for your answers and your time for being here. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Mhm.
Prabhu, I have a quick question.
Yes.
If I'm outside and so there's no altar available, so I could create prasadam, I buy some fruit and I would like to eat. What is the best and appropriate way to offer to Krishna, like outside on the street somewhere? What's the best appropriate way to offer that food or that fruit that I just picked to Krishna before I could consume it? On the go.
So if one is on the street and one finds some eatables, edibles, like fruits, so what is the proper way of offering that to Krishna on the streets and eating it? That is a question. Eating is a very, very sacred and scientific activity. Why? Because it is related to the development of our cellular structure. So it is an important act. And if we can understand the science of all that involved with the eating process, right from how we prepare it or how we obtain it, how we consume it, in what state we consume it, and how it is digested, and ultimately how it is excreted. When we understand the science behind it, then we realize that eating has to be, as humans, when we eat, we have to be very, very disciplined in our eating. And when we speak of discipline, it is to do with what, when, and how. What should we eat? When should we eat? And how should we eat? Once we understand this science of eating, then we eat at the proper time, we eat the proper things, and we eat it in the proper mode. So the best way of eating is, since it is an act of consumption, we put something within our mouth, an edible thing within our mouth, and it has to, there is the muscular action of the gut, of the alimentary canal, and there is the effect of gravity too. And there are certain ways that the organs are interconnected and related to each other. So the best way to eat is sitting down. The best way of the best of the sitting postures is if we can sit on the floor, or we can sit on a hard surface, even if it is on a chair, in the lotus position, the legs folded up, because that keeps the stomach muscles, what we call as the lower body muscles, and the back taut. It keeps it very, very tight. And the effect of gravity is such that it takes lesser energy to have the food go down the gut, go down the throat, into the stomach, and through the intestine later on. It also is very helpful in the secretion of digestive juices from the bile, because pressure, the folded leg position in the lotus position, creates abdominal pressure, which creates pressure on the liver and the bile, the bile duct, and this allows the digestive juices to enter the stomach in quantities that is healthy. On the other hand, if you are standing and eating, then the effects are a little different. So in a very typical societies, conservative societies, where you eat together as a family, whether it is in the Western world or the Eastern world, people are always asked to sit down and eat. And the logical reason for that is this. This is how the structure of the body is best suited for consumption of edibles. And the streets, that may be a little difficult. Again, it is important to see that we allow the digestive juices to enter our stomach at regulated times in a disciplined way. Otherwise, the stomach linings are affected by it. I know the stomach linings, if there is only a small amount of food and every 2 hours, then the stomach lining is affected by, or is affected by the digestive juices every 2 hours. So is that helpful, healthy for us? We have to see according to our own health what works. Generically, it is helpful to eat food at the same time every day, because then the body clock makes everything ready for good digestion. So on the street, if we find some fruit, and if we have trained ourselves not to feel hungry at that point of time, then we can always bring the fruit home and eat it. This is the best scenario. On the other hand, your question was that can we offer food on the street? We can offer food to Krishna wherever we want. The best way is if we offer it on the altar of our home, because that is where we worship Krishna every day. So wherever we worship Krishna, that is where we try to offer food to Krishna. However, when we are on the street, Krishna is present there too. So we can always chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and offer that mentally to Krishna, the entire whole fruit mentally to Krishna. Again, I would suggest that the most recommended process is to bring it home, wash it clean, offer it to Krishna, and then in a very meditative mood, eat it, consume it. Is that helpful?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Is there any other questions?
Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
please. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, one question I have. This is a little bit the spiritual side. So Prabhuji, like in the Sanatana Dharma and other things, they are talking about like a sin that a man does for a one day, he has to take 7 births, right? And then also it talks about 8 lakh births they take to take another human birth. And they say to overcome is the doing anishtanga karma. That means without expecting anything, we have to do service to people and to God. But also it talks, Prabhuji, like it take like even for like even someone has to does so much practice, even a pujari who does puja in the temple, how much devotional also, like they have to still at one point, they have to, because of their pious service, they just get into the next level where they'll be born as like yogis, munis, and then they have to become one of the ganas, like Rudra ganas or Shiva ganas, and from that they have to go to Indra Loka, and then it takes several years. When Indra goes to the Vaikuntha, then only like they can also go. So like attaining mukti for a human is not really easy, like how we are thinking. I mean, chanting helps, but is it true, Prabhuji, like even desiring for mukti is also not a good habit, but we should only ask for remembrance from Krishna for every birth. So, but according to our ISKCON principle, it says we can definitely go back to God end of the birth, right? If you follow the principles and remember. So I have some confusion around that. I try to read different things. I just want to clarify from you what do you advise on that aspect, because because ISKCON is the best part that motivates us, right? Like we can definitely go to God, like seeing Ajamila's story, how much sinful life he did, but he went back to God. So if you could kindly educate me a little bit on that, it would be really helpful.
I think there were a couple of maybe 2 or 3 different things that you were inquiring about. One was about there are in the scriptures it is mentioned that for some particular sin, so many births one would have to get as a reaction to that sin. Then there was another mention about how gradually one gets elevated to higher and higher levels of existence. And this gradual elevation happens when one has perfectly performed one's activities at where one is presently. And we also hear about how chanting is helpful. And
Yes,
we read from the scriptures about, and he, by chanting names of Lord Narayan, he immediately went back to the spiritual world. Did I cover all of them?
Yes,
Three
Prabhuji. Yes.
perspectives.
Because I used to be in fully motivation. I was in 100% motivation. But recently, I got to read this another kind of a theory, which I don't disagree with that. But I was doing some research and study, so it does make sense, because sometimes it says for a tree, only way that it can get merit is only like someone plucks the fruits of the tree and give it to God. That's the only way that it can get merit, right? Because it can't move. But that's why human birth is very, 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 very precious, which people don't realize, right? Because we can go to God anytime, we can pray. So but this made a little confusion. Is it true that very hard to attain mukti, even though we do so much chanting and thing, like still we have to take multiple births, and we have to go through that process of becoming Muni, then Ganas, and then go to Indra, and when Indra goes. So I mean, just to understand.
So, all right. So thank you for clarifying that. And it is very good that you are reading, because scriptures are meant for being read and explored. And definitely, we should make our own endeavor to read scriptures, and we should try and discuss it with others who are also reading scriptures. And this is a process. It is a process through adhyan, where we do our own self-study. Then it is manan, where we kind of analyze it, and then there has to be meditation, and in between meditation with nidhi dhyasana, and within this processes there has to be discussion with other people, so that we can expand our understanding, and we can more fine-tune our understanding. So discussions should be done, and self-study and self-readings are also very much recommended. So I would like to encourage you to continue doing that, and it is so very good. And I feel that one should be okay with it. There's no need to feel that maybe this is not recommended, or it's not like that. It is definitely recommended. So now coming to the three perspectives that I understood you were trying to present. The first one, whenever we read anything that is in a translated language of what is considered to be Vedic texts, then we must try to also see if it is contextual, if there is a context to what is being said. And generally, many a times, it is very contextual, and context can be with respect to time, place, and circumstance. At a particular time, in a particular place, and in particular circumstances, that is applicable. Whereas in a different time, different place, and different circumstances, the same rule will be applicable in a different format. That is also there is a possibility. For example, a particular kind of reaction in India during, let's say, a particular government's rule could be applied in a different format in another government's rule, when there is another party ruling as a ruling party. So there are this is allowed within the Constitution of India, or this is allowed within the Constitution of the democratic setup. Even in the United States, that is allowed, that the Senate can have a discussion, or the House can have a discussion, and they can apply that rule in a format which could be a little different from the previous format. And that is what an evolving society always does. And a vibrant society is always evolving. Circumstances and the place of application always changes. So we have to see the context. In what context is it being referred, and is the context in relationship to a particular time, particular place, and particular circumstance? If it is according to a particular desh kala patra, then we should realize that that is only in that context it is being said. Nonetheless, in today's context, we can try to understand what is the essence of what is being said. The essence is that there's going to be a reaction, whether it is going to be in terms of 7 times, 10 times, or 15 times. We have to see in relevance with the present context. What does it mean? When we also say context, it also means what is the translation being said. For example, in previous, the unit of measurement in the United States is distance is a mile, whereas in the UK or in India it is a kilometer. And then trying to relate the two is like 1 kilometer is equal to 1 mile is equal to 1.6 kilometers. It is roughly equal to 1.6 kilometers. Or sometimes we say, in science there's the pi is like 22/7 or 3.14. So it is approximately 3.14, because it cannot, when you divide 22/7, then it just goes on beyond the decimal. So when we have to apply pi in a very let us say sensitive situation, then we may not want to take pi as 3.14. We may want to take it as 22/7. Same thing with gravity. It depends upon how an object is going to fall at what speed. If the reaction that one gets for a particular action is that one is going to fall, then at what speed and what would be the impact depends on whether it is falling at the equator or falling at the poles. It is going to be different. Whether it is falling on the surface of the moon or it is falling on the surface of the earth, it is different. So there's always relativity that is there. And today, in today's times, we understand that this is very logical, and sometimes logic is called as science also. So it is very scientific. So context is very important, and understanding that in context and seeing its relevance according to time, place, and circumstance. So that is the first part about sins and their reaction. Then the second perspective about the gradual evolution. There are various ways that one can evolve, and sometimes one way of evolution may appear gradual, but it is always it being gradual is always relative to another way of evolution. Okay, so that is again very relative. So there are many ways of evolution of consciousness, and again, in what context it is being explained, that we have to see. And the context and the language that is being used. Sometimes the word Gana and Rudra Gana could mean in one context a particular entity, in another context another particular entity. Although they are all Rudras, but still it could mean a particular entity and a different entity in a different context. So all right. If we feel that a particular description seems to be a gradual evolution, it takes one can only do it if one goes to this step and this step and this step, and then we find that there is another explanation where a particular evolution takes place a little more rapidly, or maybe it is just a one-step change than a multiple step change. Both have been given to us. The principle in both is what is the consciousness of the person who is going through that evolution. So evolution is not mechanical. Evolution is very, very conscious. And how do we know that? Well, if someone has evolved once in the gradual evolution, if one has gone from, let's say, from a human to a rishi, or from a rishi, from a human to a gandharva, and a gandharva to a rishi, or something like that, there is always a chance that if there is a change in consciousness, then evolution can be in the opposite direction, or there can be devolution. One can come back to the lower species. One can come back to the lower level. So it is the consciousness that actually evolves, or let us say it is a conscious effort that the person has to put in order to evolve. So if the conscious effort is that I don't want any other position other than the position of serving Lord Krishna, and that is all one is consciously attempting, then that is what one goes to. And it may seem that it is a one-step evolution, but that evolution is given to a person that is wanting that. However, another person who wants to serve Krishna, let us say chanting does that. Another person whose ultimate goal is to serve Krishna, but on the way, in between also has other aspirations. Then there's going to be gradual evolution. One will only reach, mukti or liberation from the cycle of birth and death when consciously one is ready for it, and that is all. That is what one desires. If one's desire is, if consciously one is not desiring that 100%, then one is not even if one is doing chanting, it is not going to mechanically bring us to that position. So a conscious effort is what causes evolution, or purification of consciousness is what causes evolution. It can be gradual or it can be rapid. It just depends on these descriptions is what the speaker is trying to convey. So what is the audience? Who is the speaker trying to convey this information to? And in what context is the speaker trying to convey that? And what is the Desh Kala Patra? That has to be considered. So that is the second perspective. And the third perspective about chanting, I think I covered that also, I guess, isn't that? By chanting, one goes to serve Lord Krishna. That is how we try to encourage people through our movement, through ISKCON, that please take up to chanting, and it will give us the highest benefit. And that is true. That is what all scriptures say. Chanting of the holy names does give us that benefit. However, that is only possible if we are chanting the names of the Supreme Lord in a very pure state. If, to the extent we are trying to do it in a pure state of consciousness, to that extent, to that effort, to that extent, our effort is going to bear fruit. So we can see that this can also be a slightly gradual process. Is that okay? Is that helpful?
Yeah. Very, very. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yeah, because I was a little discouraged by that. It says, like even how much we do, also we have to even like the most pious, like Rishi also, they said, it has to go through multiple births, because that's like a static process. I thought, that's, but yeah, definitely ISKCON path is very encouraging, because, it gives assurance, like Prabhupada has given the assurance. Definitely, if we follow, we'll definitely go, and he's promising. So that's very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let me just give another context. If this is from a different yuga, then their lifespan is definitely a little longer. So it could be a long life of chanting, which is so many years of chanting, or it could be different lifetimes of a similar duration or shorter duration of different levels of evolution. So again, the context with respect to time is very, very important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. So it is. I think we have gone on for almost 2 hours. So should we stop, or is there any other?
I have a question.
Oh, another question?
Yes, please. A devotee who chants constantly with great devotion, but was never initiated, and he passed away, he died. Does he go back to Godhead? Krishna would not accept him because he's not initiated. I mean, that's kind of frustrating. Not being initiated, and what I understand versus being initiated. And if you chant, say you chant 32 rounds a day with great devotion, and you don't have a bona fide master, you wasn't initiated, what would be your story? Are you doomed and you passed away? Thank you.
You're welcome. So the question is that if one has not had the opportunity to seek initiation, take initiation, a bona fide spiritual master, and one is still chanting the holy names, and one is chanting the holy names with devotion and sincerely, whatever is the number of names that one is chanting, that means one is doing it sincerely. The number of names and the regulations of chanting the holy names. Then what is the outcome of it? Is Krishna happy with it? Will Krishna accept such a person's efforts, or just because one has not been initiated, then would there be some shortcomings in the outcome? Did I rephrase it properly? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Scriptures clearly state that one attains the state of, one attains a new body or a new state of existence based on what is one's remembrance at the moment of death. In order to be able to have a very, very favorable remembrance at the moment of death, it is helpful if one can practice properly during one's life, and it is helpful that within that practice one has the opportunity to seek initiation and to seek guidance from a good teacher. It is helpful. Whenever we are given certain options which can be helpful, that is to make the process, it is to make the practitioner who is practicing the process be comfortable. It does not necessarily affect the outcome. The outcome simply depends upon what is one's remembrance, and it is not just a mechanical remembrance that is being spoken of. When we say of what is one's remembrance, it means what is one's conscious way of remembering the Supreme Lord at the moment of death. If our conscious remembrance at the moment of death is, it ticks all the boxes, then that means that when we go to the Supreme Lord, we will be very comfortable with the Supreme Lord because we have ticked all the boxes. That means we are ready for this association of the Supreme Lord. The Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita explains that the reason for our existence here is our discomfort with being with the Supreme Lord. So it was not a conscious discomfort, it was just the idea of is it possible to be away from the Supreme Lord? So because of the desire, then that is only possible if there is an unconscious feeling of discomfort. That is when that desire can be expressed. Being comfortable again with the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world is very much needed. Otherwise, the spiritual world will not be a comfortable place for us. So going back means that now we are going to be very comfortable with the Supreme Lord, and we are never going to be confused with the idea of what it means to be away from the Supreme Lord. So we are going to be very comfortable with the Supreme Lord. Hence, that kind of remembrance, which brings us to that comfortable position, is important. And when we remember the Supreme Lord in that state of consciousness, definitely we ourselves are going to be comfortable with Supreme Lord, and Krishna will be most happy seeing us comfortable with him. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Any comments?
Soham, have you also joined for the first time? Soham? Hare Krishna, the one who has written Soham. Are you from the Metro West program? Can you please unmute yourself and introduce us so that at least we know? We are trying to find out who are there for the first time here, who have come through the Metro West program. Haresh Prabhu, did you join through the Metro West? Like, have you come to our Northborough program, to our Westborough program? Hare Krishna, Haresh Prabhu. Okay. Somehow I'm not able to hear. Okay.
Yes, you can hear me now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear.
Yeah, so I'm here for the first time, but I'm not sure about the metro group. I just went twice to ISKCON Boston Temple, and
Okay.
I got some help from Giridham Prabhu to join into the group, and then I asked for more help, and then he added me into this group. So this is how I joined here.
Okay, thank you. Rohini, Priya Prabhu, should we pause here for today?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I think it's very late for Prabhu also, because and for all of you as well. So we would like to express our gratitude to all the devotees who have today joined us for for this evening session, and we also would like to thank and appreciate His Grace Rohini Priya Prabhu for sharing this wisdom, wonderful wisdom, and sparing his time for all of us. So let us express our gratitude to Rohini Priya Prabhu in our traditional way by chanting one time Hari Bol to him. Okay, please unmute yourself.
Hari Bol, Hari
Bol.
Bol, Hari Bol.
Thank you, Rohini Prabhu. Thank you, dear devotees. Okay, Kaushik Prabhu, we can end this.
Thank you very much.